Hi folks, it's Andy. Welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. Okay, so here we are for another week of fantastic questions. We're going to jump to them in just a minute. I know it's been a little while since we last did a show, so we've got quite a lot of questions today. I didn't manage to do a show last week. I am sorry about that. I was in the Netherlands, actually, of all places, for a Kendo event called the Ejima Cup, which is a great tournament held every year in the Netherlands. You should go. It's great. But we're back now, ready to take on these questions. We're going to jump to them in just a moment. But before we do, don't forget the YouTube magic: like, share, subscribe, activate those YouTube ninja robots. Let's get more people doing Kendo. We're aiming for 100 billion people to start Kendo by using this method. We've already had about 10 million already start by doing it. What you have to do is you have to like, share, subscribe. You have to go to subscribe on the little like arrow thing. You click that and there's a little bell icon that says notifications. Click that. When you click that, it notifies the robot ninjas to go out and get people to start Kendo. They do it in a very encouraging manner, by the way. They're not coercing anybody. They're they turn up and they're like, hey, and you look like the sort of person that needs their life changing. How about Kendo? But they only know to talk about Kendo if you write a comment down below that mentions Kendo. Something like, what a great Kendo video. This Kendo video is the best Kendo video I've seen since the last episode on this channel. Or something like that. And then they know who they're looking for, all right? And we'll grow the Kendo population. Pretty sure that's how it works. Pretty sure those figures are accurate. Pretty sure that is how we're going to make Kendo take over the world. So make sure you do those things. But there's one thing that's a little bit more important than that. If you like the show, if you like this video, if you like videos like it, if you like the other videos that I did yesterday, I did a feedback video. Somebody sent, it was a really good one as well. Really enjoyed yesterday's feedback video. If you haven't seen it, we looked at 5th Dan grading. So go and look at it if you haven't seen it. I do those videos. I do analysis videos where I watch Kendo and sort of analyze it and stuff like that. I even did one of my own Shinai. We do instructional videos. Did one recently on Men Kaishido. That's been really popular. If you haven't seen that, definitely should go and watch it. Men Kaishido is a super important waza for your Kendo repertoire. You definitely will need it. And I definitely think that video will help you. If you like these videos, they're all free. We don't ask for any monthly subscription. Don't make you pay for any subtitles. Nothing crazy like that. All you've got to do is shop at KendoStar.com. Now, KendoStar.com is the best Kendo equipment website in the galaxy, universe, multiverse, history, and future of mankind. Now, of course, I would say that because I own the place. But everybody agrees with me, all right? Everyone agrees with me. We're an established Kendo company. You get the best equipment. You get the best service. All right. We're not operating out of our bedrooms. It's not a side business. We're not drop shipping. It's an established business and brand. We've been running for a long time now. And there's a reason why we're the most loved supplier. All right. If you don't believe me, check out our Trustpilot rating. All right. That's the independent reviews aggregate. We're one of the highest rated e-commerce stores on Trustpilot, not just in the Kendo realm or in the sports realm. Of all of e-commerce, all right? So shop at KendoStar, you win, the channel wins, everyone's a winner, baby. That's the truth, as the ancient Japanese samurai proverb goes. Now, let's get to these questions. We've got plenty to go at, so let's get going. Hi, Sensei, just a quick question for the next Kendo rant. I've always wondered if shortening the Tsukagawa is in any way recommended or done often by experienced Kendoka, depending on the arm length, size, etc. Thank you, and as always, shop at KendoStar. Great. So some people, there was like a trend like 10, 15 years ago in Japan to have these really short Tsukagawa, and now it's gone the opposite way. Like in Japan at the moment, lots of like high school kids have got this kind of trend of having the long Tsukagawa. I'm not a fan of either, actually. It's dependent on your physique and build, of course, but for, let's say, the sort of average height and average build person, the standard Skagawa that we fit to our Shinai at KendoStar is generally acceptable. All right, now if you want something a bit shorter, then something like the Shikon that we do, which is a shorter grip Shinai, that's actually been made. So rather than just getting, I've got an old Shinai here that doesn't have a scar on it, but instead of just like whacking a shorter like handle on a standard Shinai, that kind of throws the balance off. What the Shikon is the Shinai itself is carved, so the door is moved back so that it is properly balanced for a shorter grip. And that's the better way of doing it rather than just whacking a shorter grip on the Shinai itself. Now, what you might find as well is if you're finding that your grip needs, your hands need to be too, closer together, I'd also revisit your kamae a little bit as well. I think there's often the misunderstanding that when you're in your kamae, right, your right shoulder should be slightly in front of the left one, right? It shouldn't be straight. The hips should be pretty much straight, but the shoulders don't need to be straight because your arms are the same length, right? So it's odd to have your shoulders square and then try to hold the right hand in front. So, I think there's sometimes an issue with that, which people try to compensate with changing the scar rather than changing the kamae. So there's that as well. All right. But for the most part, I think standard length is fine for most people. Okay, next one. Thank you, as always, for the video. I experience the family stuff often. Okay, so this is a comment on the last Kendo rant I did 2 weeks ago, where we talked about, like, family Kendo. I'm currently 4th dan and been doing Kendo for a long time in the US and now in Japan. My son has been doing Kendo since 1st grade. His goal is to reach Shodan in the next year during middle school. I'm sure he will. My wife, who did Kendo in middle school for a year and a half, came back about a year ago when a bunch of the club mums all decided to start. Yeah, that's great. It's quite a common thing, that actually is, like, when kids get into Kendo, often the mums, there's often like a Mama Kendo club sort of thing, where the mums start up Kendo as well. And some of them have got Kendo experience, some of them don't. Though all the other mums have since quit, she's still going strong and loves Kendo. That's great. There are other couples that practice Kendo, and the Fufu Geiko is, have you written it? Yeah, okay. Is often joked about. Okay. How do you feel about it? In my case, I'm always the teacher and have much more experience. So, yeah, it's a very different dynamic to my situation, right? My wife is more experienced than me. We have a kind of strange dynamic these days because when we first got married, she was 4th dan and I was 3rd dan. I think, yeah, I was 3rd dan. She'd been doing Kendo since she was a little child. She comes from a Kendo family, of course. So, so she was much more experienced than me. Now the difference is then, we had our girls and we moved to Japan, and she had a lot of time away from Kendo, where she didn't really practice, and she didn't do any gradings and stuff like that. So, so I sort of I carried on very, very seriously, especially as still part of my national team. So now we have a very different sort of interesting thing, because now she's back at Kendo, but I've sort of overtaken her in the sort of Dan rank, if that even matters, which it doesn't. But she's still, I still consider her more experienced than me, and we sort of, I think we learn a lot off each other. Probably more me learning from her, still, I think. So yeah, it's it's kind of strange, but I think it's a great thing. I think it's good for the sort of Fufu Keiko is a good, it's good fun most of the time. Yeah. I think it can be a nice sort of thing, to share a common interest like that. So, I think the biggest problem we have in Kendo is sometimes, obviously, it can be competitive. So, we have to try to keep our egos in check. It can be, I struggle as I've mentioned in the last video, in the past, especially when I was younger and I was competitive, I struggled sometimes with criticism from my wife because I wanted her I wanted her to cheer me on and tell me how great I was. My ego couldn't quite handle the truth. But you know, they were teething problems, let's say. Hello Sensei, I'm having difficulty striking men without pulling the Shinai back. Theoretically, I know I should move my arms forward and use Tenouchi at the moment of impact. My sensei say that during Kihon Keiko, I'm able to do it correctly. Kind of, I guess. However, during the Shiai or Jigeko, I automatically revert to pulling back. I'm Nidan and I want to take the exam for Sandan next year. But over a year, I've been training this point with little progress. Any tips? Thank you very much. So it's very difficult it depends exactly what you mean. So without pulling the Shinai back. So do you mean before striking? So like pulling back before you strike? Or do you mean hitting and pulling back the Shinai this way? I've got a feeling that you mean the second one from the way that's all worded, which is fine. What you don't want to do is hit and lift the Shinai over your head like this, man, this way, which is a very common problem. Having said that, it's also not really natural to be like, boom, like this, and then force the Shinai forward that way. There should be a little, like that, a little raise afterwards. That's normal. It's normal. So if that's the case, that's, you know, if that's what we're talking about, then we're talking about the extent of which the Shinai raises. It doesn't want to go over your head. As a general rule, keep your hands and Shinai in front of you. It doesn't have to be pointed straight like this. What's that? Where's that Shinai? Can I demonstrate this? Don't need to be like that. Normally, buck on like that, and then maybe, oh, I just hit the ceiling. You know, okay, it's too short. I can't do it in here. Here we go. I've got a TheraBand here. This might do. So not buck on this way, not doshi this way, but bam this way, or bam this way is okay as well. You know, you might be like this, and then yeah, and then bam this way. This is perfectly normal. Like this amount, like this. You see this? It's pretty normal. All right. What you don't want to do is let it go this way and your upper body weight goes backwards. That's not good. But if you can keep your hands and Shinai in front of you, bam, this way, then this is kind of normal. All right? It's kind of normal. And, you know, watch a Hachidan Shinsai, you'll see. They're not going like that, are they? They're not going like, like that, right? It's nice and relaxed and it's fluid and it's smooth and it, bam, this way. All right? Hope that makes sense. These things are great, by the way. If you got tennis elbow, really, really good. Really, really good. Twist them like that. Right. Always got one on my desk because it's a recurring issue for me. It's all about strengthening it, you know. I know we're not talking about that. No one asked me about that, right? But tennis elbow, it's really bad, right? And really, really common in Kendo. We use this and you use it to strengthen your tendons in your elbow, right? Because that's what tennis elbow is. If you strengthen them, and it helps alleviate, another fancy word for you, the tennis elbow issues, all right? Ever have that issue? There you go. Right. Hi, Sensei. Thanks again for giving us another great Kendo video. I got to do my part so the YouTube ninjas recruit people into starting Kendo. There we go. See, here's someone that knows what they're doing. The question I want to ask is why are kote made exclusively in a mitt style with a thumb rather than a glove style with 5 individual fingers? I feel that having 5 individual fingers will help improve my tenouchi. I've heard from some people this kind of design will make the fighter more prone to broken fingers. Is there any validity to these claims, or is it just regulation tradition to make them in a mitt style? Actually, there was a manufacturer, I should say, that made the sort of 5-finger style kote in the past. They looked really weird. I think there was some sort of issue with injury. It cannot be as protective, all right, because you're going to end up with like fingers bending and stuff like that if you're not careful. Now, look, it's not going to help your tenouchi, all right? You can do tenouchi. If you can do tenouchi properly and correctly, then the standard kote design is perfectly viable, all right? It's perfectly fine, okay? You don't need to spread your fingers out in Kendo. You don't need to. They can be kept together. The current kote shape is perfectly suitable for correct kendo use. There's no we're kind of trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist by adding separate fingers. All right, you don't need separate fingers in the kote for modern kendo use. All right. Now I do know that the 5-finger separate ones, they were very popular with people practicing types of kenjutsu or koryu, which is fine. That's different, and I'm not going to talk to that because I don't know anything about it. So I'm not going to say anything about that. But what I do know about is modern kendo as it stands today, and you definitely don't need separate fingers in your kote. It's not necessary. It's just not necessary at all, and I think it does pose a potential risk of injury. All right. For the same reason, you shouldn't use a naginata kote for kendo either. Naginata is very different in lots of ways to kendo. And from what I understand now, I'm not a naginata practitioner, all right? But big love to those that are, all right? Before you get there in the comments, because I know some of you watch these shows every now and again, all right? I do love naginata. It's just not for me, all right? But from what I do understand of naginata, they don't hit or generate as much force in the strikes as we do with the Shinai and Kendo. So the padding in the naginata kote is not sufficient for Kendo use. So yeah, especially as we do stuff like Hayatari and we do like, you know, stuff in Tsubazariai and there's all sorts of stuff. So I really don't think we need to go down that route. All right. So you don't need separate fingers to improve your tenuchi. Let's put it that way. All right. Tenuchi is done here and here. Okay, this is the tenuchi. That's the tenuchi. You don't need separate fingers for that. Okay. All right. Okay, next one. Hello, Fish Sensei. I'm a high school student who plays tennis very seriously in Canada, and I'm really interested in Kendo. Great. See, this is the YouTube ninja that helped us out here. I'm telling you now. I was just wondering how long it'll take for me to get into a Borga and begin sparring at 2 to 3 practices a week. Have a great day. It depends on you, and it depends on the club that you join, and it depends on the teacher. It will not be fast. All right, it will not be fast. It will be probably, I think a good estimate would be 2 to 3 months. It could be 6 to 12 months, depends on you and your teacher. All right, and there's a good reason for that. All right, Kendo's not the sort of art so that you can just jump in the bog and have a go. All right, it's dangerous and you'll get hurt. All right, if you do that, all right, or you could hurt someone else. It's most likely you'll get hurt if you do that, but still, it's not what we do. All right, Kendo. The one thing about Kendo is there's no like personal style. Kendo is very much about following the correct procedure and the correct form. Right, and you have to be able to do that well before you can put the Borg on, and then you have to try and do that with the Borg on, and that's all very different once again. So it does require a bit of patience, all right? But I do very much encourage you to go and give it a go. I'm sure you'll love it, all right? And I think, you know, if you've got a competitive nature from playing sports like tennis, I think it can be I think you'll find a lot of things in Kendo that will be very relatable, and will you'll find enjoyment in. Actually, I don't know much about tennis, but I do watch it on the TV, every now and again, especially when Wimbledon's on. Being a Brit, and actually, I think there's parallels between Kendo and tennis, but like certainly high level Kendo and tennis, but that is a different story. Okay, it's not like in the footwork or the movements or anything like that. It's nothing like that. It's to do with the seme and aiki. But anyway, hi Fish Sensei. First of all, I want to thank you for making these videos. Last year I was very nervous about taking my first Dan Shinsa, but your answer on Kendo Rant really gave me that extra push to do it. Great, that's fantastic. Lovely. Well, congratulations. I have a question about attitude during Shiai. In team matches, I've mostly been playing a Senpo, and I sort of developed this high energy, super aggressive play style, and I sort of make myself hate my opponent so I can dominate and hopefully win the match. Recently, I was in a competition in teams of 3 where I was acting as Taisho. I was lucky enough to be in the finals of that competition, and the Taisho match was against a quite decorated player, national team member, states team member, 5th dan, etc. On one hand, I know I can't afford to hold back against this level opponent, and on the other hand, it's my understanding that a Taisho should show beautiful, proper and clean Kendo. On the day, I fought like usual, and although I was able to secure a victory, I was quite uneasy with the way I conducted myself during the match, especially when one of my seniors described it as a feral Taisho match. Is there a balance to this? Is there a way for me to not hold back without having to hate the opponent? Okay, so first off, for anyone who doesn't know, Senpo is the first player in a team. So if you have this is a team of 3. Normally, Kendo is done in a team of 5, normally, but it could be more, it could be less. And it's normally Senpo is the first player, Jiho is the second player, Chugen is the third player, Fukusho is the 4th player, and Taisho is the 5th player. When it's teams of 3, you remove the 2 in between, and you simply have Senpo, Chugen, Taisho. Okay, and yeah, look, I understand what you mean about this sort of developing a sort of pseudo hate for the opponent, and it's something that I guess when I was younger, I sort of had a similar sort of mindset. I'm not sure it was super successful, to be honest, but it did help me stay focused on doing my best to win. So, you know, I think you'll probably develop past it at a certain point, but if it's helping you now, then fine. You did post a video of the match you're talking about, and you asked me not to show the video in the show, so that's fine, we won't. I watched the match, and I think calling it feral is a little bit of an overstatement, if I'm honest. I'll get back to that in a minute, but first off, you understand is Taisho should show beautiful, proper and clean Kendo. No, Taisho's job is to ensure that their team wins the Shinai. That's their job, all right? In the Shinai, you have to win. You have to win, all right? You have to win and you have to avoid defeat, okay? Now, the Taisho's job is to make sure that happens, especially when the pressure falls on them. Now, it doesn't mean at all costs whatsoever, so like resorting to complete violence or breaking of the rules. But within the rules of Kendo Shinai, you must do everything that is within your power to win, all right? It's not noble or in some way dignified to sacrifice your team for the sake of being able to say that you were doing correct or beautiful Kendo. One thing that was said to me many years ago, when I first moved to Kumamoto, I used to say, yeah, you know, yeah, I want to do the Shinai, but I want to do Shinai that's beautiful and people look up to and people think is in Japanese kakkoi, okay, so cool, or, you know, like people think that's cool. And the sensei said to me, he said, you know what the coolest thing in Kendo is? And I was like, what? He said, victory. He said, because even people that don't do Kendo think it's cool when you win. I was like, well, that's true. That's cool. I like it. Yeah, that's true, right? Now, I'm not saying that you should like throw everything out of the window, because the fact of the matter is, the Kendo that's strongest in Shinai is correct and valid Kendo, and it is cool and it looks cool and it's beautiful. That's why the All Japan Championships Kendo is beautiful and amazing. All right. There are exceptions, of course, but overall that is the case. Now, so I don't think you should get hung up on this. I should put on some sort of performance when I'm doing the Taisho Sen, when your job is to win for the sake of your team. That's the fact, right? Now, I watched the match that you posted. It's a bit rough. It's not that bad. I've seen much. You see a lot worse in Europe, I'll tell you that. But I think there was a couple of points that stood out to me. You could do it relaxing a little more, all right? I wouldn't say it's feral, but there's a part where the guy Shinai gets caught on you and you start screaming at him. You know, when I say screaming, like, you know, doing the the kiai, yeah, and then start pushing. You know, just chill there. There's nothing gonna come of that. You're not gonna get a point for that, right? So probably just chilling there would be because what you're doing is, like, if you were in a calmer frame of mind, and being in a calm frame of mind isn't the same as being less serious or less switched on. All right, you have to be calm and aggressive at the same time, and which I know is a paradox, but you have to be able to do that in the Shiai to be really successful. In other words, you have to not give in to your emotion. All right, you don't want to fight emotionally. So the thing is so there was that sort of thing. It was a little bit relaxed. I think the way that you do tai atari is not effective and is a little bit probably unpleasant to be on the receiving end, because what you tend to do for your tai atari is your hands come in this way and you tend to body check with your upper body. Now, the problem is with that is you're unable to follow it up with any proper waza. And you're unable to control the direction of the Shiai by doing that. Now, I know you might think, yeah, but if they come and crash into me really hard, I have to try to, you know, hold my ground. Not necessarily. If you have the good ashisabaki, good footwork as well, then you'll be able to control that very, very easily. So there's that as well, all right? I just think it puts you at a disadvantage. I'm not saying it's feral or something like that, but it does put you at a disadvantage. It's not the most effective way to do the tai atari. And then there's an element in the video where your opponent comes flying in at you, and you do one of these tai atari, and it catches your opponent at a sort of an unfortunate moment, should we say, and they fall over. Okay, and they fall over. Happens a lot. Now, the way he fell over, it wasn't really you pushing him over. You didn't do it in a sort of particularly aggressive or violent way. It's not like you pushed up this way. You just did this kind of tai atari to receive it. Now, your tai atari was strong, firm, probably not the best in terms of technique, as I said, but it wasn't violent and it wasn't outside of the realms of fair. All right, and then, to be honest, I think it just hit him at a point where your opponent's feet were sort of crossed and he just lost balance, fell over. Fine, no big deal. And then when he hits the deck, you went on to hit him. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that. Okay. Now, the only thing I'm going to address about the whole situation as it played out is the point at which you hit him. I think you just sort of saw white and was like, he's on the floor, I've got to hit him. Whereas if you'd sort of relaxed a little bit, you'd have been able to be more accurate and made a strike that might have been considered valid. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just sort of bashing at him on the floor. Because obviously he's gone down, his Shinai's like this, so you can't hit him in that position unless you're smart and you've got your thoughts collected, right? So that's that. But that's not to do with violence or being feral or anything like that. That's just strategy, right? Now, the only other point that will clean your whole Shiai up is after that, you make the hit, not successful, and then you sort of just walk back. So it doesn't look quite as complete or correct as it should. Instead, after falling over, you make a hit, don't get the ippon, kamae, then walk back calmly. Rather than this sort of try not to give off this impression of like, yeah, how'd you like that? Yeah, do you know what I mean? So that'll just have an overall better impression, all right? Because stuff like that influences Shimpan too, I'm not going to lie to you, all right? So that's all I'd say. But I think saying it was feral is a little bit overstating it. All right, there was some elements of the match that were a bit rough. The points you scored were great though, very, very good, and I think you fought the match well. Doesn't, you know? So you just pass your shodan, right? It's fine, no problem. All right, but just chill a bit. Okay, next one. Hello, Fish Sensei. Firstly, thanks for always entertaining these questions and answering them. No problem. It's greatly appreciated. I have two questions today, please. Question one, are there any Shinai restrictions, weight, length when doing Shinsa? What about for the age of higher dan Shinsa? As a Kenshi gets older, he is not as strong or can't reach as far anymore. They allow an older Kenshi to use a lighter or shorter Shinai for the Shinsa. Question 2, when a Kenshi achieves their Shogo title, is the expectation that everyone should call them sensei regardless of whether they do kendo with them or not? What about for the other styles within the AJKF umbrella? For instance, if they are Renshi, Kyoshi, or Hanshi in Iaido, should a kendoka still call them sensei even if they don't do Iaido themselves? Thanks again. I'll have more questions soon. Okay, so question 1. No, there's no official regulations for grading in terms of the Shinai. I think the correct thing to do for the most part is to use the appropriate Shinai as you would in the CI. However, if an applicant is older or for whatever reason not in the same sort of physical condition as a sort of young, fit and healthy athlete, then I don't think there's a problem with them using a sort of slightly lighter Shinai. I don't think anyone cares about that. It seems ethical to me, right? And I think that's I think if you have a normal sense of ethics, it's not a case of them trying to cheat. It's a case of them trying to balance the situation, isn't it? I think in that case, I don't think a shorter Shinai is a good idea, to be honest. I think the standard length Shinai is better. I know they can't jump as far, but making the Shinai short is not going to help that. So yeah, but I think it's, I think that's fine. For question 2, so here we are again about this whole, I've seen this blown up on Reddit as well last couple of days. We just love this word sensei, don't we? Sort of outside of Japan, we love it. And it's kind of weird. I don't quite know how to properly address it from my point of view. Because the easy thing for me to say is like, look, just in Japan it doesn't work like that. But we're not in Japan either, so it's kind of a bit strange. But no, I don't think it's right to say that if you get a shogo, then you should be called sensei. I mean, I don't personally, this is just, the issue we've got is that we're trying to apply like a Japanese style cultural social hierarchy to a variety of societies and cultures that don't inherently have that as part of their everyday life, right? So the metric at which we make the judgment on that tends to be downgrade, because we don't walk the same Kendo life cycle as most of our counterparts in Japan. Now, what I mean by that is the standard, now there's exceptions to this, but the standard like Kendo life cycle in Japan is you start Kendo when you're in primary school and then you continue it through to being an adult, right? You go to you do that, you go to junior high, you do high school. And I'm talking about people people who are adults doing Kendo, right? This is generally the way in which they've done Kendo. All right. So they'll have started when they were young, they'll have done it at high school, university, then they'll have gone and got a job. Now, unless they were very high performers at Kendo, their job was probably not connected to Kendo, and unless they absolutely love Kendo, they probably took a break. Maybe 5 or 10 years. Then they get married and have kids. Then their kids start to grow up. Their kids become sort of first year elementary school. And that's when Japanese kids are expected to start what's called a naraigoto. Okay. And when they do a naraigoto, it's like a extracurricular activity. All right. It means, and the naraigoto is it's like extra. Narao means to learn. It doesn't mean to play or to have fun. So these things are not considered hobbies or like pastimes, right? So the goal of them is not intended to be enjoyment, though it doesn't mean that they don't enjoy them or can't enjoy them. All right. So then their own kids are old enough to have that. And if that parent has a Kendo experience, then Kendo is often the naigoto that they'll choose for their kid. All right. Then once that happens, often they will start up Kendo again themselves. All right. And maybe it's not that route, but maybe they'll just have a blank from Kendo, and then, you know, they'll settle into their daily life and they'll decide to take up Kendo again because they want something extra in their life. All right. This is called ribaken. Okay. And this is very, very popular as well. And this is the route most people take. And, you know, you got to remember, most people, before they blank, they'll get to around 4th dan, and they'll come back and they'll get 5th dan, no problem. They've done that once they've been doing that 5 years, they'll get 6th dan, and then eventually they'll get 7th dan. It's pretty much the standard case. Okay. Now, the thing is the dan grade is not, it's just not a central feature of that process. It is like, I mean, it happens, but it's entirely a personal thing. So people don't go around asking each other what dan grade they are, for example. And you might know someone and do Kendo with them for a long time and never even know their dan grade. It just might not come up. So the title of sensei is all very much contextual. And the thing is because these people have sort of gone through this this process to do Kendo, it's very different to in sort of countries outside of Japan, where it's often the case somebody that's in their 30s or 40s or 50s or whatever might decide, oh, I want to take up a new hobby and start Kendo, and then they'll go into the dojo and they might be younger than the teachers. Sorry, they might be older than the teachers. The teachers might be younger than them. And in Japan, that's not quite often the case. All right, it's not never. It does happen. As the chap in the previous message said, that his wife started Kendo again after a break with the other mums. That happens too. Of course it does. But as he also said, most of them don't stick around. So, you know, so it's the thing. So this whole, to bring it back to this point of sensei, there's people I know who we refer to as sensei, and you know, we call them sensei even though they were 3rd dan. All right, there was a chap at the dojo, my last dojo in Japan. All of the adults were called sensei. Being an adult was the qualifier of getting the title of sensei, because the club, although we had a big group of adults, it was and local dojos are generally, well, this is the other thing, it's not all like that either. You have different types of dojos too, right? So like that type of dojo, it was a kids Kendo club, right? So the point of the club was to teach Kendo to kids in the local community. Now, of course, us adults, we practiced together as well, so we got our own keiko in. But the point of the club was to teach Kendo to the kids. So from the kids' point of view, the adults are there to teach them. So all of the adults are called sensei. It doesn't matter if they were 20 years old. It didn't matter if they were 50 years old or 80 years old. It didn't matter if they were nidan, sandan, whatever, right? They were sensei. And much like if they went to school, all the teachers are called sensei. It didn't matter how long they've been teaching, what age they are, whatever like that, what grade they got in their university degrees. Nobody cared, right? And that's very much how it works. And there's people I know that are younger than me that I would call sensei, even if they're lower grade than me and they're younger than me, maybe because their job is that they're a Kendo teacher at high school. So calling them sensei is normal, for example, right? It depends, but it's all super contextual, and it's hardly ever connected to grade or shogo. So I don't think it's right to say there is an expectation that everyone should call them sensei. I think the issue we've got is we don't have that same cultural system outside of Japan. So it's quite difficult to gauge who we should call sensei. My general rule is I call people sensei based on my relationship with them. So if they're senior to me, and in my mind, they are a sensei, which is a bit of a strange thing because it's kind of subjective. And I call them sensei. There's a sensei I know who's Nidan. I still call him sensei because he's been doing Kendo since before I was born. Probably like, you know, he's been doing Kendo like decades and decades and decades, and he just hasn't done any gradings. And it's not a reflection on his Kendo ability. That's not relevant to the thing at all. But I still respect him because he's one of the pioneers of Kendo in this country. So I'll always call him and think of him as sensei. So yeah, I don't think it's connected to grade. It's difficult because I have my sort of opinion skewed a bit because I spent a lot of my Kendo journey in Japan where I was subject to that culture. So it's very different. But I don't think it should ever be sort of expected that someone should be called sensei necessarily. Certainly not by the individual who is on the receiving end of being called that title, you know. But at the same time, you know, it is correct, isn't it? It is correct. You know, the students in my dojo call me sensei. They call my wife sensei. If I visit another dojo, then I will refer to the sensei of that dojo as sensei, especially to the students. There's people who are very good friends of mine, for example, that I go way back with, and normally I'm on first name terms or whatever. But if I go to their dojo, then to their students, I'll refer to them as something sensei, right? Like, respect, like a school teacher would. Because, you know, I don't know if that's answered your question or not, mate, but that's where I am. Do you think the number of people doing Kendo outside of Japan is greater than the number of people doing Kendo inside of Japan these days? Also, do you think that the active Kendo population in Japan is growing or shrinking? No, I think there's still a lot more people doing Kendo in Japan than there is outside of Japan. The number of Kendo people doing Kendo outside of Japan is very, very large. Obviously, we're aiming for 100 billion with our YouTube project, but in real terms, no, the Kendo population in Japan still dwarfs the Kendo population outside of Japan, and it's kind of unusual in a way because with many other Budo it's different. With Judo and Aikido, for example, and it wouldn't, and I believe it wouldn't surprise me if it's the same with Iaido, but I don't know. The population is generally bigger outside of Japan. I think it's the same with karate as well. But with Kendo is the most popular martial art in Japan by a long way. Judo is the second, but Kendo is more popular by a great deal. There's more in Japan still. Now, is the population active Kendo population in Japan growing or shrinking? It's shrinking, but Japan's population as a whole is shrinking. So that is a thing that the Zen Kennen have been talking about, actually. It's not necessarily that the number of children starting Kendo is fewer, it's that there's less children. And it's a problem Japan's been facing for quite a while, actually. So yeah, and obviously when we talk about active Kendo practitioners, it's difficult to quantify because I don't think it's right to count kids that are doing Kendo as physical education in school, right? Like if one of my kids has to play a game of hockey in school, I don't think they count towards the active population of people playing hockey in the UK. Do you know what I mean? Because it's, for example. So yeah, but it is shrinking, unfortunately. Okay, we're nearly there, we're nearly there, we're nearly there. Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me. I know this has been a long show today, all right? But we're getting to the end. We've got 2 more questions, 3, 4 more questions left. Okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's been a good, fun chat though, right? Sensei, from many of your anecdotes, it seems that you'll have successful experience dealing with personal ego in Kendo. Could you talk more about it? In the previous Kendo rant, you mentioned that you got criticism from your wife, an influential Kendoka in your life, while you wanted some reinforcement. How did you navigate through your mindset in that moment? As for everyone, I think we all want to look cool in front of people who believe in us, but worrying too much about these thoughts just distracts us from the main objectives in Keiko or Shiai. What about your experience with practicing with high-graded sensei, 7th or 8th dan? How to explain to junior members of the club that there are more than using Shinai to touch sensei's bogo in that keiko? I don't need anything too philosophical. Can you say something more practical to look for in these keiko experiences? I like the door of the Kamui Umbra. I wonder if it's still available as a customized door when the set offer is gone. Maybe I'll get it in a decade. My Myrmidon is still going strong. Thanks, always entertaining these questions and answering them. No problem. Okay, so that's a pretty deep question. About the door, I don't know if we'll carry on doing the door or not afterwards. So yeah, I can't say if it'll be there in a decade or not. And it's great that your Myrmidon's still going strong. Right, so look, the thing is, the fact is, right, is that in Kendo, your biggest opponent is always yourself. It's always yourself. And I know that sounds really sort of airy and what have you, lofty, but it's a fact. All right, the biggest problems I've ever had with my Kendo progress or my Kendo practice have come down to me and not being able to overcome myself. And that's generally in the form of my own ego. All right, I can't even get a camera in focus, never mind get my own ego in check. Come on. Anyway, you're going to have to look at a blurry me for a bit until it decides what it wants to do. Like I say, there's all these moments where in the beginning, as you said, when I first started sort of seeing my wife, first got married, all I wanted was praise from her. Oh, Andy, you're so cool. Oh, yeah. Oh, well done. Yay. You know, kakkoi. Like that. She's not that sort. That's not her personality. All right. She's like, you know, okay, well done, but like, I think you should sort out your footwork, you know. If I get the well done, that is. But you know, look, we've been married for 17 years, so you know, we're well in tune with each other's sort of personality at this point. So yeah, it took me a little while to kind of realize that and understand that she was saying that sort of stuff to me because she wanted me to do even better. You know, she was being honest with me because she wants the best for me and because most people aren't honest to me. And that's the fact. Especially when I first moved to Japan, for example, you go and practice in Japan. This is a real issue, right? It took me, I think I was in Japan for 2 years before anyone took me seriously. And was actually like honest with me. Like they didn't treat me as a visitor. Yeah. Before someone turned around to me and was like, what? You want to go in the world championships? You having a laugh? That's what, you know, one sensei said that to me. They were like, world championships, you? No. I think that was literally his words. I was like, and this is like a seriously good sensei as well, of a really prestigious, very famous place. And that's because he knew his students were some of the best kendoka in Japan, and they'd never get the chance to do that. And then I was in there, and they were like, and he was like, how is this guy getting to go? You know, and that's fair comment. So you know, it took time, and it took me a while to understand that, and realize that honesty is the actual compliment, that they trust me enough to know that I'll understand that they mean it in the right way and they're not just being mean. Yeah. Because, you know, the thing is in my experience of teaching Kendo outside of Japan, you know, we do have a different way of processing and dealing with our ego. And if it gets bruised, we quickly look for someone or something to blame. or cry that it's unfair, rather than appreciate the honesty of someone giving us direct and truthful feedback. And it's similar about when you talk about practicing with high-graded senseis. Of course, I spent many years practicing with senseis, trying to impress them, trying to get them to tell me how good I was, because that's what I wanted to feel like. I wanted the sensei to feel, oh, especially when I lived in Japan. And if I'm really honest, like I'm really, really honest, really dig down, if I really dig down into it, I wanted the senseis to think that I wasn't just another foreigner. I wanted them to think I was special. And I somehow, I got it more, or I understood it more, or I was better than the other foreigners, and I was more like one of the Japanese. That's what I wanted them to think in those days. So I'd try and hit them as much as I could. And of course, they always complimented me. But that was what I didn't understand is that being told that I was good wasn't the victory. That was the defeat. That was, oh, okay, yeah, you're good. The victory would be when they turn around and say, I think it got worse, or something like that. Sensei said that to me once, made me cry. But this is it. So and it's hard to explain to junior members this thing as well, because I think it's a bit of a rite of passage. I think you have to go through that stage. Like I've talked about the Kendo Dunning-Kruger effect, where you're like third, fourth dan, you think you know everything and you know nothing. Right, you think you know everything, you know nothing. Those people that, when you're at that stage, especially if you're young, if you're like in your 20s and you're third or fourth dan, you think you are like the boss, and especially if like you're involved in competition and you tend to do quite well in Shinai. You just think you know everything and everyone else knows nothing. Like you know the real thing, everyone else thinks they do, but actually you know it the best. Yeah, I'm saying that because that's what I was like. And you try to tell one of those, look, it's not about how many times you can hit them. It's about challenging yourself to hit with everything you can, even though you know that you won't be successful, or that they'll do the Debano Waza or Kaishu Waza. They ain't up for listening to that, but they'll come to understand. They'll come to understand, hopefully, or they won't. But their progress will halt if they don't come to terms with that at some point. All right. So that's that. I don't know if that properly answered you, but that's where I am on it. I think the ego is the biggest thing that you have to overcome, your own ego. And that doesn't mean that you have to be like falsely humble either, but humility is a massive part of Kendo. You have to know your place. You have to know your place. And that's the key, actually, is knowing your place. And it doesn't mean like, okay, oh yeah, it's like me saying like, oh, well, I'm just a low-graded beginner. I don't really know anything. Because that's not true either, right? I've done Kendo for 20 years. All right, I've done Kendo around the world. I've experienced a lot of things. I've been blessed to experience a lot of things that a lot of people can't experience or haven't been able to experience. I have built, I should say, a sort of depth of knowledge on various things. I am not complete though. Yeah. And I'm not high level. I'm high level in context of where I live, but in Japan, I'm just normal, right? So I believe I understand my place at the moment, right? So, but I don't think it's right to be falsely humble either, like over humble. But that's not the same as being arrogant either, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Is what I'm saying making sense? I don't know. I should have thought this through and read this question before I answered it. Right, next question. Okay. Hello, Vincenzo. I've been studying Kendo for about a year. I love it. It complements my other pursuits and my personal development, and I've fallen in love with it. I recently received an order of 3 Shinai from KendoStar, and they are beautiful. Same day I received my order, my youngest son, 17 years old, asked if he could come try out Kendo. We both have Taekwondo backgrounds. My son is a high-performing autistic young man. He's not comfortable with the kind of close contact that's indicative of Taekwondo, although he's always been curious and fascinated with sword fighting. Great. Of course, I told him to come to class with me and not worry about costs or anything, and I gave him one of my new Shinai. He'll be coming to his first class tonight. I'm very excited. This is great. Mostly, I wanted to thank you all for the videos, knowledge, and excellent quality products I received from KendoStar. Assuming he intends to pursue Kendo, I'll happily be ordering Borg, Kendo, Gi, Hakama, and Bokken from KendoStar. What I've learned from you, notwithstanding, is if my son decides to take up Kendo, you and KendoStar will have made an incredible impact on my family. Thank you, Sensei. Well, look, that's not a question, but look, this is why I do it. All right, this is why I do this. This is why KendoStar exists. All right, so thank you. I don't really know what to say, but that's beautiful. And I wish you and your son all the best. I hope Kendo gives you everything that it's given me. Hello Fish Sensei, you got my very first Zekken from you. It's very nice. Good. The oval grip Shinai are full length or of handle, or do they taper it around? No, they're oval all the way up to the tsuba. Okay, so they're oval from the tsukagashira all the way up to the tsuba. Okay, they're fully oval. Okay, next one. Hi Fish Sensei, I have a question for this week's rant. Background: I believe I follow all your advice when it comes to caring for Borga after practice. I let it air dry with a clean space that isn't direct sunlight, and I occasionally wipe it down with a damp rag while not allowing any leather to remain wet. I occasionally also give it a spray down with alcohol solution. I'll stop if you feel it's detrimental. However, I sweat a lot, and I inevitably end up with salt stains on the interior and some spots on the exterior of my men. I've attached pictures for reference. Yeah, I saw the pictures. Additionally, despite caring for my Borgo after practice, it still developed a fairly strong smell within the realm of acceptability, but still more than I'd like. Question: what do you recommend for safely deep cleaning of men? And what's your is your previous video on deep cleaning the kote in cold water still your recommended action? In case the set matters, it's a Myrmidon set. I'm still greatly enjoying the set a year later, hence why I'd like to be sure I'm taking care of it in the best possible way. Thank you for your time. Okay, so I saw the photos. Yeah, those salt stains are pretty intense. So, first off, to clean it the way it is, you can't just dump it in a bucket of water like you can with the kote, right? The menbuchi, which is the hard bit around the mengane, the cage, that's painted black and red, you can't get that wet, all right? So do not soak that. That's very important. What you can do is, if you can get a tub that's big enough, you can fill that with water up to a certain point, or you could do it in the bathtub actually as well, and you could put the men in with the mengane facing up, and let the water come up to where the mengane is, just before the menbuchi. But don't let it go up as far as the menbuchi. Right, you can leave it in there, you can put it in there, and you can give it a little bit of a... Don't scrub it too hard or you'll fade and damage the fabric, but give it a bit of a rub to sort of, you know, clean it a bit. And just soak it in there for 10 minutes or so, right? And then get it out and let it fully dry, all right? Let it fully dry. Then, once it's fully dry, once you get back to using it again, after practice, give it a wipe down with a wet cloth. Or what you can do is you can spray the futon with your alcohol solution. That's fine, as long as it's not too strong. All right, like I do it like 9 parts water, yeah, and just spray. Do it every time. It'll be fine. All right, and that'll stop the salt stains a lot. All right, just give it a spray only on the futon, yeah, every time on the inside and the outside, so it's damp to the touch, but you know, will dry out in time. I think that'll help a lot. All right, and then you can use a wet rag to gently rub off any salt stains that form. All right, and do it as they build up. Don't let them build up loads and then you try and get rid of it all. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I think that will help a lot. Okay, last one. We're here at the end, folks. Thanks for hanging in there. Thank you very much for all you do for the Kendo community. No problem. I love it. Did you hear that message just a minute ago? I have a question. I keep hearing when talking with people practicing different prefectures that their grading is kibishi, is very kibishi. And I have found that pass rates tend to be quite low in Aichi and Kyoto. But it could be my bias based on anecdotal evidence. Do you think that there's noticeable difference in the levels of strictness of grading between prefectures, or is it a myth? Right, so what you're saying is kibishi means strict, right? So what you're asking is it true that in different prefectures of Japan are the gradings stricter or less strict? I don't know. All right, I'd need to, you know, I'm not sure if that's really been looked into. I haven't seen any of the data in it. All I will tell you, right, all I will say on this really is in my time in Japan, I lived in 3 different prefectures, and every prefecture told me that their prefecture was kibishi, was strict on the grading. Got a feeling they all say that. All right, I've got a feeling they all say that, okay? Now, I'm not saying it's true or not, and I'm sure there will be variances. Of course there will be, all right? But I think overall it's pretty much similar. But I don't know. I'd have to see the data. But all I would say is that everywhere I lived, they all said it was strict where they were, all right? So, yeah. Okay, there we are. We're at the end. Thank you very much for joining me today. I know it's been a long one. Thank you for hanging on till the end. I hope you have a fantastic weekend of Kendo planned ahead of you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.